Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. In today's episode, I speak with Kathy Fulton. She's the Executive Director of the American Logistics Aid Network, or better known as ALAN. She and her members are focused on helping organizations dealing with disasters on meeting their supply chain needs. A lot of times they need to get water, food, and other supplies into a disaster zone, and many times they don't know how to do it correctly. So ALAN helps support them in this need. So stay tuned as I talk to Kathy about how her members are making a significant difference when it comes to disaster relief. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Thanks for being with me today.
Hey, Leanne, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get started, can you just explain a little bit about your background and what brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So my background is not a straight and narrow path by any means. Getting into the disaster world was not something I ever really considered as a career plan when I was in college many years ago. But I was working in IT for a warehousing organization, and Hurricane Katrina happened. And there were a lot of supply chain disruptions that happened along the Gulf Coast. The ones that made the media were, the challenges around government actions primarily. And so that fallen organization got started, the organization I'm with now, called the American Logistics Aid Network. And they were looking for someone who had some IT skills to volunteer. And I got voluntold that I was going to help this organization. So I was able to kind of bring my IT skills with the little bit that I knew about logistics and supply chain into the disaster space. And that's kind of my entrance into the disaster relief humanitarian world. There's a whole lot of other backstory there, but 15 years and I'm still kicking.
Oh, well, and it was just recently that I was told about your organization, and I'm so glad to have heard about it, because when it comes to disasters, that supply chain piece, whether it's humanitarian relief organizations, even government, just trying to get product to and from a community is so critical. So can you tell me a little bit about ALAN?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Disasters happen in a physical space. The things that we need to eat need to move through that same physical space. The things we need to eat, the things we need to wear. And so the way that happens is, because we don't have Star Trek replicators yet, we still put things on trucks and move them to people. And that happens all day, every day. So ALAN was created right after Hurricane Katrina to kind of be the industry's response to humanitarian and disaster activities. The goal is to take the expertise and knowledge that exist in the commercial supply chain activities and bring that expertise and knowledge to bear on the disaster space. So if you think about it, we're moving goods around the globe daily. The things we need for our everyday lives, those exist within global supply networks. And so those same things are still needed after a disaster. The demand doesn't very quickly change. Maybe it's populations are relocated, move somewhere else, or they've lost things, and so you have to surge. But the types of things, it don't change much. We need food, we need hydration, we need medicines, we need shelter. And so ALAN is able to work with our industry partners, which are all of the supply chain associations. We're able to work with them to say, we understand that there are these needs that the humanitarian responding organizations have, or that government responding organizations have. Help us understand how commerce, how businesses can serve those. And we act as a matchmaker. So we're bringing the organizations together. We're not, we're simply connecting. So that means that we have to speak 3 different languages. We have to speak government, we have to speak nonprofit, and we have to speak business.
And so say an example would be, there's a disaster that hits, say, Puerto Rico. They need, say it's the Red Cross needs water, they need tarps. So, I mean, maybe they have their own logistics network figured out, but say they don't, would they reach out to you and say, look, we're needing to get this much product, this much equipment into Puerto Rico. Can you help us? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so that's exactly how our organization is set up. So once a disaster happens, or even prior to, if there's staging that needs to happen, the nonprofits who are going to be executing their missions on the ground are in need of some type of logistics support in order to mount those responses. And so we can help fill their gaps. The large organizations like the Red Cross or the Salvation Army, they have their own logistics expertise and knowledge on staff. But even still, in the super, catastrophic disasters, the large scale disasters, there are gaps. And so we can help find those resources to help fill those gaps. And for every, and for every large nonprofit organization out there, there are 40 or 50 mid-sized and smaller organizations who don't have those resources, who don't have access to that information or that expertise. And we can be their voice, and we can advocate to the business community on their behalf.
Yeah. Would you say that in a case perhaps of island communities, the added complexity of the logistics piece is there? Because, I mean, I would assume if you're on North American continent, you can drive somewhere or take the road system, even fly, but there's just an added complexity, I would assume, when you've got island communities.
Yeah. So island communities, or situations where a disaster creates an island-like environment. So I'll talk in a moment about Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria and why that disaster was so complex. But I just want to hit on the point that if you can't drive there, or you can't fly there, or whatever the reason that the area that has been affected is now an island, yeah. It's cut off from its resources that it would normally have, that it suddenly exponentially increases the complexity. So just a word about Hurricane Maria, and there were a lot of factors at play. Number one, island environment, right? They rely on, I think it's about 80% of their food source comes from somewhere else, right? Off island. They don't produce any petroleum on the island. There are no refineries on the island. It's a mountainous, much of the region is mountainous. And so you're dealing with roads that are tricky on a good day, post hurricane, when there are trees and limbs across them and bridges that have washed out. It's even more difficult. Then you add the complexity of 2 big storms, Harvey and Irma, which had affected, Harvey with Texas and Irma with Florida. Much of the supplies that come into Maria come through the port of Jacksonville in Florida. It was a perfect storm in a bad way, because we were also at this point in the logistics industry where transportation capacity was very tight. I mean, I could go on and on and on down the list, but all of that to say, it required that coordinated logistics activities so that those scarce resources that did exist could be put to the right use. And there were a lot of, as everyone has seen from numerous after-action reports and studies that have been done in mainstream media, there were a lot of mistakes made. Things that we thought were good decisions at the time and we, royal we, that we all thought were good decisions at the time. In hindsight, have we considered this other factor, and it may not have, it may have changed our decision.
Yeah. Well, I would think in your industry, you need plan A, B, C, D, E. If this happens and this goes down, we need this way to get the product there. And in the case, you're right, of Puerto Rico, when you have so much food that you're importing, and say if it's the port in, did you see Fort Lauderdale?
Jacksonville.
Oh, Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And so if that port is impacted as well, what's plan B to get food there? Because it doesn't take very long in a situation like that for it to become a humanitarian crisis, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Like what you guys do in your industry is people notice when it's not working, but they probably don't even notice it when it is, because it's just the stuff's there.
Yeah, and I have I've had the joy. I'll call it joy because I love my job and I love the previous job I did. But I've had the joy of working in industries where it's exactly like you said. In IT, you don't even notice unless your computer's broken, right?
Yeah.
And then you're calling the help desk and yelling at them. The same thing if your grocery store shelves are empty, right? But that's a whole lot more critical than, in the cyber world. And there, I get it, cyber complexities and cyber attacks and everything. But, those life safety, the food, the hydration, the medical care, those compound very, very quickly when those supply chains are broken.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, and this is one thing you don't want to have to learn in a crisis, is how to ship appropriately, because it's hard enough to figure out shipping and, tax, how to get things through customs and various things when things are fine, let alone when you're in an absolute crisis and you have products like food that are perishable.
Right.
And they have to get there early. You don't have a month to get them there. So if I was an organization, say that doesn't have that relationship with you right now, is there stuff on your website that would that I can register for to be part of your network, or how does that work?
Yeah, so partnering with Alan, with American Logistics Aid Network is pretty simple. If you're a U.S.-based organization, we ask that you be a 501c3 nonprofit. We do work with international organizations, and there are different, regulations there as well. You can go on our website, and there's a request form, and you can request the type of service that you're looking for. If it's transportation or warehousing, equipment to operate your facilities, it's all right there. Or if you just need expertise, if you just you're thinking about doing something and you want someone who can give you a little bit of advice, we have this benefit of this network of thousands of professionals who are doing logistics and supply chain activities day in and day out, and they love being experts, and they love telling, they love helping the nonprofits community.
That's great. That's great. So you mentioned, are there other organizations like yours outside of the U.S. that you're aware of?
Yeah, so I know that also within North America, within Canada, is an organization called Trucks for Change, and they're focusing on the logistics activities of disaster and humanitarian response. I know, we are coming out of the Australian bushfire season, and there's an organization in Australia called Corporate to Community, and they're focusing on the connecting businesses to those nonprofit needs as well. And there are also organizations who focus not just on kind of general supply chain or general logistics, but focus really on one slice of it, either through geographic activities. So I think of like the California Resiliency Alliance and all of the great information that they put out. And then also organizations like Healthcare Ready, who focus on that medical and pharmaceutical side of things, which is medical and pharmaceutical supply chains. which right now, I mean, we're having this conversation in early February where we're so concerned about coronavirus, this possibility of a global pandemic. And those supply chains are very much in the news right now, and very much under examination. But that industry touch point and being able to share that information and get the information to the people who need it for decision making is critical.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you might have wanted to mention before we wrap up? Or
it's really, this is everybody can do this, right? It doesn't take one organization to help in a humanitarian, to help the nonprofit community to use your skills and expertise. Whatever your business is good at, whatever your business does to make money, there are ways in which you can go out into your community and improve outcomes for those who are suffering from disaster, for those who are suffering from hunger, whatever that homelessness, whatever you're doing in your business, those skills and knowledge and expertise can be applied to help others every day of the year.
That's awesome. That's a great way to wrap up. So Kathy, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And I will put a link to your website in the video description so people can go find out more about how to get in touch with you or how to help you. But thank you so much for the work you do all the time, because it is very important.
Thanks, Leanne.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.